My name is Jonathan Davis, and I'm writing this from my corner office on the 47th floor of Goldman Sachs in Manhattan, where I'm a managing director in the investment banking division, making more money than my childhood in Detroit ever suggested was possible. Yet I spend every day waiting for someone to discover that I'm a fraud who doesn't belong in this world of white privilege and inherited wealth. At 30, I have every external marker of professional success: Harvard MBA, seven-figure salary, penthouse apartment on the Upper East Side. But I can't shake the feeling that I'm an imposter who somehow tricked my way into spaces where people like me aren't supposed to exist, and at any moment someone will expose my inadequacy and send me back to the economic circumstances that my achievements were supposed to permanently escape. The imposter syndrome began during my first week at Harvard Business School, where I arrived with a full scholarship earned through exceptional undergraduate performance at Howard University, but immediately felt surrounded by classmates whose family connections, inherited wealth, and cultural capital made business school seemed like a natural progression rather than an impossible dream achieved through extraordinary effort. My study group included the son of a Fortune 500 CEO, the daughter of a private equity founder, and several students whose families had attended Harvard for generations, creating social dynamics where I felt like I was constantly performing competence while they seemed effortlessly entitled to success. The cultural differences were immediate and overwhelming. Conversations about family vacation homes in the Hamptons, boarding school memories, and casual references to family businesses that generated more wealth than entire neighborhoods in Detroit where I had grown up. When classmates discussed internship opportunities, they mentioned family connections at major banks and consulting firms that would guarantee their summer placements, while I spent hours researching application processes and networking strategies that might give me access to opportunities that seemed automatically available to my white classmates. The academic performance anxiety intensified as I realized that my educational background, while strong, had not prepared me for cultural codes and unwritten rules that govern elite business education. Case study discussions assumed familiarity with country clubs, private banking, and business environments that I had never experienced, creating constant fear that my comments would reveal my outsider status and lack of cultural fluency. I found myself over-preparing for every class, studying twice as long as necessary to ensure that my contributions would be perfect rather than risking exposure of knowledge gaps that might confirm stereotypes about diversity admissions. The first banking internship at Morgan Stanley during my first summer was simultaneously thrilling and terrifying, providing access to the financial industry I had dreamed of joining, while also confirming my fears about being the only black face in rooms full of white analysts and associates who seemed more comfortable and confident than I felt. The other interns came from Ivy League schools and affluent families that had prepared them for investment banking culture through generations of professional connections and social capital that I was still learning to navigate. The networking events were particularly challenging because they required social skills and cultural knowledge that weren't taught in business school, but were essential for building relationships that would determine career advancement. Cocktail party conversations assumed shared references to exclusive schools, vacation destinations, and social experiences that I couldn't relate to authentically, forcing me to become skilled at deflecting personal questions while projecting confidence I didn't feel about my belonging in these social and professional circles. The full-time offer from Goldman Sachs felt like validation of my abilities, but also intensified imposter syndrome as I joined an analyst class where I was one of only 3 black professionals out of 50 new hires. The disparity was so obvious that senior executives would introduce me at client meetings as evidence of the firm's commitment to diversity, unwittingly reinforcing the feeling that I was valued more for my racial representation than my analytical capabilities or deal-making potential. The analyst years were brutal for everyone, but they were particularly challenging for me because every mistake felt like evidence that I didn't belong, while my white colleagues seemed able to learn from errors without questioning their fundamental competence or right to be there. When I made calculation errors or missed deal details, I would spend sleepless nights wondering whether I'd been admitted to Harvard or hired by Goldman Sachs as a diversity candidate rather than on merit, despite having no actual evidence to support these self-doubts. The diversity hire stigma followed me through every promotion and achievement, creating constant uncertainty about whether my success reflected my abilities or institutional efforts to increase minority representation. Colleagues would make comments about how lucky I was to benefit from diversity initiatives, or suggest that I had advantages in promotion discussions because the firm needed black managing directors for client meetings and recruiting events. These comments were usually framed as observations rather than accusations, but they consistently undermined my confidence in my own qualifications and accomplishments. The code-switching exhaustion became overwhelming as I learned to navigate professional environments that required constant performance of cultural fluency I didn't naturally possess. I studied my white colleagues' communication styles, dress codes, and social behaviors like an anthropologist, adapting my speech patterns, leisure interests, and even my musical preferences to fit expectations about how successful investment bankers should present themselves. The effort required to maintain these performances was mentally exhausting and emotionally isolating. The relationship challenges extended beyond professional settings as dating and social interactions became complicated by questions about authenticity and belonging that affected every aspect of my identity. Women I dated would make comments about how articulate I was or express surprise about my educational background and career success, revealing stereotypes about black men that made genuine connection difficult. I found myself constantly proving my intelligence and legitimacy, rather than simply being accepted as the accomplished professional I had worked so hard to become. The breakthrough moment came during my 4th year as an analyst when I was working on a major merger deal and developed an innovative valuation methodology that saved our client $50 million in transaction costs. The client specifically requested that I lead the technical analysis for future deals, and my methodology was adopted as best practice for similar transactions across the firm. Despite this clear evidence of exceptional performance, I still found myself wondering whether the recognition was deserved or whether I was being overpraised because of my minority status. The therapy that began after my promotion to vice president was motivated by anxiety attacks that were interfering with my work performance and sleep patterns. Dr. Michael Thompson, a black psychologist who specialized in working with high-achieving professionals, helped me understand that imposter syndrome among minorities in predominantly white professions was a documented phenomenon that reflected systematic exclusion rather than individual inadequacy. Imposter syndrome is often a rational response to being in environments that weren't designed for people like you, Dr. Thompson explained during one of our sessions. When you're constantly the only black person in rooms full of white executives, when your colleagues make comments about diversity hires, when you don't see people who look like you in senior leadership positions, it makes sense that you would question your belonging. The problem isn't your confidence. It's the system that makes minorities feel like outsiders despite their qualifications. The healing process involved challenging negative self-talk and developing more realistic assessments of my abilities and achievements. I had to learn to separate my authentic performance from the external messages I received about diversity and representation, understanding that my success was legitimate regardless of other people's assumptions about how I had achieved it. This meant developing internal validation systems that weren't dependent on approval from white colleagues or supervisors who might never fully accept my presence in elite financial services. The mentorship relationships that supported my career development included both formal programs through Goldman Sachs and informal connections with other black professionals in finance who understood the unique challenges of navigating imposter syndrome while building successful careers in predominantly white industries. These relationships provided crucial perspective on common experiences and successful strategies for managing psychological challenges that weren't addressed in traditional professional development programs. The leadership development that emerged from overcoming imposter syndrome included taking on more visible roles within the firm and industry organizations that address diversity and inclusion issues. Instead of trying to minimize my racial identity to fit into white professional culture, I began leveraging my unique perspective and experiences to provide value that my white colleagues couldn't offer to clients and colleagues dealing with similar diversity challenges. The client relationship building became easier as I developed confidence in my authentic professional identity rather than constantly performing whiteness to gain acceptance. My background and perspective actually became advantages in developing relationships with diverse clients and understanding market opportunities that other bankers might overlook due to their more homogeneous social and cultural experiences. The promotion to managing director came 6 years after joining Goldman Sachs, making me one of the youngest black MDs in the firm's history. The achievement felt genuinely earned rather than driven by diversity quotas, because I had built a track record of exceptional deal performance and client relationships that provided clear evidence of my contributions to the firm's success. The promotion also came with responsibility for recruiting and mentoring other minority professionals who were dealing with similar imposter syndrome challenges. The speaking and writing that emerged from my experience includes presentations at business schools and professional conferences about imposter syndrome and strategies for succeeding in predominantly white corporate environments. I share my story to help other high-achieving minorities understand that their self-doubt often reflects systematic barriers rather than personal inadequacy, and that success requires developing internal confidence systems that aren't dependent on external validation from people who may never fully accept minority presence in elite professions. The family relationships have been complicated by my professional success, with some relatives questioning whether I've sold out or become disconnected from my community origins, while others express pride but struggle to understand the psychological challenges that accompany breakthrough professional achievement. I've had to learn to maintain authentic connections to my background, while also embracing the opportunities and responsibilities that come with financial success and professional influence. Today, I work as a managing director, while also serving on nonprofit boards focused on educational opportunity and economic development in underserved communities. I've learned to view my presence in elite financial services as both personal achievement and community representation, understanding that my success creates opportunities for other minorities, while also providing resources that can support broader social and economic advancement. The investment approach I've developed focuses partly on opportunities in minority communities and businesses that other bankers might overlook due to cultural unfamiliarity or bias. My background provides insights into market opportunities and client needs that enhance my professional value, while also creating positive economic impact in communities that have been historically excluded from access to capital and financial services. Key resources and solutions that made the difference. Professional therapy with culturally competent providers who understand the intersection of race and career achievement helps high-achieving minorities process imposter syndrome and develop authentic professional confidence. Mentorship programs that connect minority professionals with senior leaders who have successfully navigated similar career challenges provide guidance and perspective on systematic barriers and successful strategies. Employee resource groups and professional associations for minorities in specific industries create peer networks and shared strategies for dealing with workplace discrimination and imposter syndrome. Leadership development programs that focus on authentic professional identity rather than cultural assimilation help minorities leverage their unique perspectives as career advantages rather than obstacles to overcome. Executive coaching services specializing in diversity and inclusion issues provide individualized support for managing workplace dynamics and advancing in predominantly white professional environments. Industry conferences and networking events focus on minority professionals, create opportunities to build relationships and learn from successful role models who have overcome similar challenges. Educational programs about unconscious bias and inclusive leadership help create more welcoming workplace cultures that reduce the environmental factors contributing to minority imposter syndrome. Career development resources that address the unique challenges faced by high-achieving minorities provide practical strategies for navigating workplace politics and advancement opportunities. Today, when I meet other minorities who are struggling with imposter syndrome in professional settings, I tell them that their self-doubt often reflects the environment rather than their abilities, and that success requires developing internal confidence that isn't dependent on approval from people who may never fully accept minority presence in elite spaces. Your qualifications are real, your achievements are earned, and your perspective provides value that others can't offer. The challenge isn't proving that you belong. It's learning to believe in your own legitimacy regardless of other people's assumptions or biases.